Jai Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jannava, Jaya Girivardhari, Jaya Girivardhari, Gopi Jannava, Jaya Girivardhari, Jaya Girivardhari, Jaya Jaya Raja Janaranjana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Raja Janaranjana, Yamuna Tiravachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Yamuna Tiravachari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Vijanavalabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Gopi Janavalabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Rajajanarandana, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Rajajanaranjana, Jaya Jamunatiramanana, Brahmachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Namuna Tiravanari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Shri Radha Madhava ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Believe it or not, we're still here. 5th canto, chapter 2, about the activities of Maharaj Agnidra, text number 15. Rupam tapodana tapascharatam tapognam ye tattukena tapasa bhavato palabdham chartum taporhasi maya sahamitra mahyam kimva prasidati savai bhava bhavano me Rupam tapodana tapascharatam tapognam ye tattukena tapasa bhavato palabdham chartum taporhasi maya sahamitra mahyam Kimva prasidati savai bhava bhavano me Rupam tapodana tapascharatam tapognam Hyetat tukena tapasa bhavatot palabdam Chartum taporhasit maya sahamitra mahyam Kimva prasidati savai bhava bhavano me. Word for word translation says Rupam, beauty, tapadanaha, O best of the sages performing austerity. Tapacharatam, of persons engaged in executing austerities and penances. Tapagnam, which dismantles the austerities. Keyword here, tapa. He certainly, etat, this too, indeed, kena, by what? Tapasa, austerity, bhavata, by you, upalabdam, achieved, chartum, to execute, tapaha, austerity, arhasi, you ought. You ought, you should do, arhasi. Maya saha, with me, mitra, my dear friend, mahyam, unto me, kimva, or maybe, prasidati, is pleased, saha, he, vai, certainly, bhava bhavanaha, the creator of this universe, me, with me. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Actually, is the translation by Srila Prabhupada? I know that there were some parts of the 5th canto which were translated by someone else. Of course, Prabhupada signed off on it. But at some point, there was a devotee who was helping him to translate. Perhaps someone can remember. I seem to recall thinking that he was from somewhere in the Middle East. Or maybe Prabhupada was in the Middle East somewhere. I'm sorry, we need one of our ISKCON historians to remind us.
I can tell you that lots of translations all over the books were done by Prajumna. Prajumna with Srila Prabhupada's sanction.
Right. Wasn't there also a devotee, Atreya or something? Atreya, Atri.
to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tarka Prabhu. Yes. So sometimes the translations were actually not by Prabhupada, although we always say every morning, translation by Srila Prabhupada. But certainly Prabhupada read them all. So anyway.
Srila Prabhupada actually did the translations, but they were sometimes modified by Prajumna.
Okay.
You know, all of Srila Prabhupada's translations were edited for English, and Prajumna would, it was particularly his job as the Sanskritist to oversee the translations.
Okay.
He had permission pretty much to make all kinds of adjustments, which were reviewed by Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada had great confidence in him. But Srila Prabhupada did dictate his own translation, so sometimes the translations will be verbatim what Srila Prabhupada originally gave, and sometimes it'll be adjusted a little bit in order to bring it closer to the actual Sanskrit word for word.
Fantastic.
That's all I can tell you. Hare Krishna.
No, thank you, Tarka Prabhu, for clarifying, because my memory was failing. So the opponents of book editing should take note that even in Prabhupada's time, of course, Prabhupada trusted some devotees to edit as needed. Anyway, I think it's still appropriate to say translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki Jai. So Maharaj Agnidra is saying to Purvachiti, O best among those performing austerities, where did you get this wonderful beauty that dismantles the austerities performed by others? Where have you learned this art? What austerity have you undergone to achieve this beauty, my dear friend? I desire that you join me to perform austerity and penance, for it may be that the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, being pleased with me, has sent you to become my wife. It's a nice attitude. Purport. Agnidra appreciated the wonderful beauty of Purvachiti. Purvachiti, original consciousness. That's a nice name, right? Yeah, Purva means like original. Indeed, he was surprised to see such exceptional beauty, which must have been the result of past austerities and penances. He therefore asked the girl whether she had achieved such beauty just to break the penances and austerities of others. He thought that Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, might have been pleased with him and might therefore have sent her to become his wife. And he thought correctly. He requested Purvachiti to become his wife so that together they could perform austerities and penances in family life. In other words, a suitable wife helps her husband perform penances and austerities in household life if both of them are on the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding. Without spiritual understanding, husband and wife cannot be equally situated. Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, is interested in good progeny. Therefore, unless he is pleased, one cannot get a suitable wife. In fact, Lord Brahma is worshipped in marriage ceremonies. In India, even today, wedding invitations are still issued with a picture of Lord Brahma on the face of the card. Can anyone verify that that's still the case now? I haven't seen many Indian wedding invitations. I've only seen some in America. They didn't have Brahma on them. So the devotees need to review this purport when they send out their invites. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om again. Hold on. Excuse me. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cham Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So we're hearing about Maharaj Agnidra, who's speaking so nicely to Purvachiti and appreciating that her beauty must be the result of austerities that she's performed. And that's true. I mean, likely it's true that by the performance of austerity, one gets reward, might be material, might be spiritual. Of course, the devotees were interested in tapodivyam putraka yena sattvam shudyad yasmad brahma sokyam tvanantam. That by performing divine austerity, tapodivyam, we become our consciousness becomes purified such that we can experience ever-increasing unlimited spiritual happiness. Brahma sokyam tvanantam. Sounds nice, huh? So the tapodivyam, the tapa, the fire, purifies the consciousness so that we can taste that spiritual happiness. If our consciousness is impure, you can't taste it. Like when a little child is upset about something, you know, and they can't like experience the happiness all around them. Sometimes kids are playing and they'll have some conflict over one piece of plastic, right? It's my piece of plastic. And then they'll be crying, even though just surrounded by all the elements of happiness, right? There's toys, there's friends, the right setting, but they just can't taste that happiness because the consciousness is impure. So similarly for us, big kids, we're fighting on a more subtle level against the material energy. And so therefore we can't even taste that Brahma Sokyam Tvanantam. It's right there. It's right there. It's on the tip of the tongue. Hare Krishna. But we can't taste it when our consciousness is impure. So we need that tapa, the fire, purifies the consciousness. Like a crucible purifies a metal of its impurities. So that's the tapodivyam, but also the reward from austerity can be materially benefiting. And in the case of Purvachiti, you know, if she was already a damsel of the heavenly planets sent by Brahma, then she was probably highly qualified in the performance of austerity. You don't just stumble upon the heavenly planets, you become qualified to be there. And so Maharaj Agnidra, he recognizes that. So it's interesting how refined and sophisticated is this culture of bhakti yoga, Krishna bhakti, is that even for a man who, you know, by superficial estimation is very lusty, he's probably feeling horny. He's seeing this beautiful woman and he's, wow. But still he has the refined sophistication to recognize that it's not just by chance, and therefore it's not just up to my exploitation. There's a system here, there's an arrangement, there's a divine arrangement for all of these things that we experience and that we're attracted to and that we enjoy. And that system requires my participation. So he's not just like seeing the woman as the object of sense gratification, although certainly it's pleasing to his senses, but he recognizes there's a system here, there's an arrangement by the Supreme Lord, and that therefore I should reciprocate with that arrangement and not just covet a woman, take advantage of her, and then toss her aside. So he's ready to marry, in other words. Love at first sight, marriage at first sight. That was more common back in the day. Nowadays, it takes us like 2 or 3 years to figure out if I'm going to marry this person. Maharaj Agnidhra was ready to, pay the cost to enjoy. So, we should appreciate the sophistication of his sexual desire. We might read some of these verses and think, oh, how embarrassing. It's cringy. If a man talks to a woman like that these days, it'd be considered cringe. But actually, it's very sophisticated because he's recognizing her beauty is the result of austerity. That's the arrangement of this universe. In fact, he even goes so far as to see that you must have been sent to me by Lord Brahma. This is actually explicitly stated by Manu in his Samhita, of which I took a note, but then the app fails, of course, right when I need it most. We are no longer Shrutidara. Can't remember everything. I have to take notes all the time. But then you have to remember, which note-taking app did I take that note in? Anyway, I might not be able to find it right now. But basically, Manu said that the wife is not wed by the man's own will, but is given to him by the demigods. Can I find it? Oh my God. I promise that it's here, and it's worth you waiting for me to find it. Oh, there we go. In his Samhita, chapter 9, text number 95, Manu says, the husband receives his wife from the gods. He does not wed her according to his own will. In other words, you're not the doer, gentlemen. It's a gift from the gods. And that's what Agnidhra is also seeing. Lord Brahma, being pleased with me, has sent you to become my wife. That's the right attitude. I mean, that's like a real respectful attitude that women who become wives deserve. The husband receives his wife from the gods. He does not wed her according to his own will. Doing whatever is agreeable to the gods, he must always support her while she is faithful. Sounds pretty good, huh? There's romance. There's so much romance in Krishna consciousness. So, yes, we might read some of these verses by Maharaj Agnidhra and think, wow, what a henpecked guy, overwhelmed with lust. But not really. Actually, it's very sophisticated. Sure, he has desire, but he recognizes the system in place for the legitimate fulfillment of that desire. That her beauty is the result of austerities performed. It's not just some chance that her ancestors crawled out of the mud and happened to mate. Some sort of mud-skipping fish-like creature happened to mate with the most beautiful amongst all the other mud-skipping fish-like creatures, as Darwin would propose. It's just some chance interaction between the sexiest amphibians. And we're all just the result of anyway, the mating of strange life forms long in the past. No, it's not just this some chance arrangement, but that if someone has beauty, if someone has good intelligence, if they have wealth that comes easily, Janma, Aishvarya, Shruta, and Shri, good birth, wealth, learning, and beauty, that these are symptoms of one's good karma, likely accrued by the performance of austerity. Not just the austerity by which one tortures the elements of the body, like the classic tapasvi, but just to perform austerity, acts of charity, penance, to be truthful pleasing, beneficial, not agitating to others, and in regularly reciting the Vedic literature. That's the austerity of speech. So if one acts according to that austerity, then you can expect to get good reward. The austerity of the body. Oh, the austerities of the body are there, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, right? In chapter 17, in text number 14, in which Krishna says to worship the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence. That's the austerity of the body. It's not that hard. It's not all about standing on your head and starving yourself. Just showing respect, using your body in service to the Lord, showing respect to the Brahmanas, the guru, your mother and father. Maybe that's the hard part. Being clean, simple, celibate, and nonviolent. I already told you the austerity of speech and the austerity of the mind is to be satisfied, simple, to have gravity, self-control, and to purify one's existence. So we perform these austerities and there's a good result. In the case of Purvachiti, which is very beautiful. And Maharaj Agnidra, he recognizes that. He glorifies, saying, your beauty acquired through austerity could dismantle the austerities of others. So he knows you're like fire. Fire is very powerful, very transformative, but can also destroy. So he has a respect. It's not just like his lust. It's a lot of respect for the opposite sex and his wife. I mean, I didn't read the verses coming up, but I assume he marries her. So there's a lot of respect there. And I think modern men could learn from this. We should be similarly respectful, and women too. I mean, this could swing both ways. Should all be respectful of the opposite sex, our partners. And recognize that there's an arrangement in place. It's not just some chance interaction. We're not just like billiard balls bouncing around in the universe and happening to meet and to mate. Maharaj Agnidra recognizes that if I receive a wife, it's actually a gift from the gods. I should treat her as such. So that's a really good attitude. It's really good. In the purport, Prabhupada said he asked the girl whether she had achieved such beauty just to break the penances and austerities of others. You know, like he wants to know, what is your motivation? Because even in olden days, as is the case now, some women are out for blood and just like to leverage their assets to cause all sorts of problems. Some, obviously nobody is here in this meeting right now, but it goes without saying, just as there are men who like to take advantage of others, there are women who like to leverage their assets to break penances and austerities of others. There used to be a term for it, right? A homewrecker. A homewrecker. That was a saying back in the day. Oh, she's a homewrecker. Of course, nowadays there aren't very many homes anyway. So I guess the homewreckers are out of business. Kali Yuga ki jai. But Maharaj Agnidra, he wants to know, like, what is your motivation? Are you out here just to cause some sort of destruction, you know, for the gratification of your own selfish vanity? Or would you like to perform further penances and austerities with me in marriage? You know, and that's the what is it? The courting period of a relationship. You got to figure out, what is a person's motivation? Are they looking to destroy or create? And so Maharaj Agnidra, he asked pretty bluntly, you know, what are you doing with your beauty? Are you just trying to break the penances and austerities of others, or are you looking to perform more penance and austerity? Because that is the real definition of marriage. is a sacrifice performed together. There's a lot of sacrifice. I mean, there's a lot of married people in the room here, so you all know. But there's a lot of sacrifice, and there should be, not just sacrifice like, oh, now I can't be so selfish and just live for my own vanity. There's also the sacrifice to give to others. The grihastas especially have to give, and in this way justify their lifestyle, which tends to be a bit more sense gratificatory than others. Not justify, but to purify. Because the grihastas tend to have more sense gratification, legitimately, hopefully legitimately, they should purify that tendency by giving, making sacrifice. If you have some money, you can give. If you have some time, which is even more valuable than money, you should give that time to preach Krishna consciousness, or to give prasadam, to give support, give. So Purvachitti, he wants a partner in enlightenment, and that's as close as you're going to get to real conjugal love in this material world, the partner in enlightenment. He requested Purvachitti to become his wife so that together they could perform austerities and penances in family life. In other words, a suitable wife helps her husband perform penances and austerities in household life if both of them are on the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding. So, because there are also a few people in the room who are on the market, in the marriage market, then I will just give this one advice, that compatibility, the most important aspect of compatibility in relationship, in my opinion, and it seems to be said by Prabhupada here, is a compatibility of devotional service. If we have a similar inclination to serve Krishna, to do this austerity and penance for Krishna, then that relationship has as much probability of success as you can hope for in Kali Yuga. How's that for a legally binding and diplomatic statement? Because I won't indulge in romance. Oh, she's like this. Oh, he's like that. What we should really be asking is, do we have compatibility in devotional service? Because that's what makes for a relationship that lasts through all the peaks and valleys of married life. And there are a lot of peaks and valleys. As Gurudev said to me, typical sannyas fashion, he said, once you get on that roller coaster, you can't get off. So you go up and you go down, you go all around. But if we have compatibility in devotional service, then that's something that won't quit. And then the relationship lasts. And I can certainly say from my own experience that because my wife and I have a similar desire to serve in a very particular way, that this just trumps over whatever other problems that might be going on. And there have been plenty. I mean, there have been days like the day when we have our big preaching program and we're like trying to make prasadam, we're just like arguing. Sarvatma Prabhu knows, he was here for one of them. But it's just always like, even though there's a conflict, we're doing the service together, and it just trumps over anything else that might be going on. Somehow, that's how we've stayed together and continue. So if there's compatibility in devotional service, and if you can do that together, then it's a great foundation for a probably successful relationship. As high probability as you can hope for in Kali Yuga. Because in Kali Yuga, of course, someone just looks at you the wrong way and we just divorce. That's how petty we are in Kali Yuga. You just looked at me the wrong way, just divorce. Fight for the next 30, 40 years. Punish the children for it. Of course, sometimes there are legitimate reasons. I don't want to get into that, of course. There can be situations where people need to separate, unfortunately. But let's not become like the petty Kali Yuga, the stereotypically petty Kali Yuga person who's just like mere misunderstanding, minor infraction is the result of complete dissolution of a relationship. That's so Kali Yuga. Purvachitti knows exactly what's what. If we can perform austerities and penances together, if we're on that same elevated platform of spiritual understanding, then we can have a real relationship. He's not just like, wow, you're beautiful. That's all I need. You got the whole package. No, he recognizes that the relationship will be successful if we can serve together. So Prabhupada's giving some really valuable marriage advice. A suitable wife helps her husband perform penances and austerities in household life if both of them are on the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding. Without spiritual understanding, husband and wife cannot be equally situated. It's interesting because what's implied by this sentence here, if I may be a little pedantic with the grammar, is that husband and wife are equal with spiritual understanding. So anyone can argue with me about that if you like. I know there are statements that say otherwise. The general trend is that a man should lead the family, generally. But on the spiritual level, there is equality. This is what's being said here. Without spiritual understanding, husband and wife cannot be equally situated. So what's implied, we may infer grammatically, if I may indulge a little bit in that dangerous game of grammatical inference, is that with the spiritual understanding, husband and wife are equal. I don't hear any protest yet. So, all right, we'll go with it. Lord Brahma, now I gotta top that with something even more controversial so I don't get in too much trouble. So Lord Brahma, the creator of this universe, is interested in good progeny. Is Lord Brahma racist? Because now, nowadays, if you talk about, we want to have good progeny, we want to have good stock, it harkens to like ethnic cleansing and sort of social control that we learned about in the Holocaust and stuff like that. But we should know for certain that when Lord Brahma wants good progeny, there's no mention of particular racial combination. But good progeny means those who are Aryan. The Aryan race is not actually an ethnic identity, but it means those who are spiritually progressive. Lord Brahma is interested in good progeny. So he wants good relationships. Apparently, he wants good relationships. Unless he is pleased, one cannot get a suitable wife. Obviously, as the engineer and the first being of this universe, he wants it to go well. He's interested in good relationships. He wants good progeny, and that means good combination for spiritual progress. Because people who are compatible spiritually, they produce children who are also spiritually progressive. That's the definition of Aryan. Hitler was a little confused. He thought it meant some particularly blonde hair, blue-eyed Ubermensch. But actually the Aryan means those who are spiritually progressive. And so there should be good combination of husband and wife. It's not necessarily some ethnic thing. Because if that's the case, then ISKCON is failing big time, because we have a lot of interracial marriages going on at ISKCON. I remember there's one guy came along in New Zealand, and that was like his main motivation. He's like, I'm all about that international, interracial relationship. That's why I'm here. It's like he knew like that's what he wanted to find, a girlfriend from another dimension. He was Malaysian, I think, and he married this girl from Switzerland, and they're like as different as night and day physically, but compatible spiritually. And now they're still going, have a nice relationship, nice children. Sachi Dulal Prabhu, I think he's Malaysian. Anyway, so ISKCON is demonstrating because we have so many international relationships. but that success in marriage and producing good progeny is actually the result of being on the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding. That's the kicker. That's the key. So we should look for a partner. Those who are looking for partners should look for partners on the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding. Brahma wants this. Good society, good population, good generation. You recognize that it's not just like some sort of racial thing. You have to stop race mixing. Unfortunately, people still talk like that now. No more race mixing. Keep your bloodline pure. No, keep your consciousness pure, because your blood is just gross anyway. Nobody's blood is pure. It's all disgusting. It's all filled with microplastics, cancers, and who knows what. All of our blood is problematic. High cholesterol. Who's got pure blood? Yuck. We should keep our consciousness pure. Purvachitti, original consciousness. And that's what's being described here. And that's what's being promoted by Lord Brahma. And that's what Maharaj Agnidra, even though he seems to be just overwhelmed in ecstasy, seeing this beautiful woman, still he has clarity of mind to recognize that there's a divine arrangement to how all this works. And I should participate in that. Not just be some lusty dog, but recognize that the wife is a gift given by the gods, and she should be treated as such. And we should engage in the performance of austerity and penance together. And that's real love. Hare Krishna. So that's all I have to say about that. I mean, I could say other challenging things, but I think we'll just finish and ask if any of the devotees have some thoughts or some retorts or challenges. You're allowed to disagree with me because I am nobody's guru. Of course, not much to disagree with, because I'm just saying, we should all respect our partners and love each other and serve together. I mean, it seems like a pretty simple platform here.
Hare Krishna.
Great. Oh, Hare Krishna Tarika Prabhu.
Thank you for a nice class. That was a nice treatment of a nice verse. Made a lot of important points. And I don't find anything to disagree with. Some things, but that was good.
Thank you. Trying to be a good husband.
Yeah, irrefutable. Very important points. Very important points. Most of our devotees are going to marry at some point or other. They certainly hope to have a successful marriage, and these are some of the important guidelines. There's lots of ways to trip up, but it's important to establish proper foundation from the beginning, to have a proper understanding. Your approach to marriage with the concept that this is an arrangement for my sense gratification, you are pretty much paving the way to failure. You're going to have problems right away. Husband shouldn't be thinking that his wife is his property. He has tremendous responsibility, but she is the property of her own spiritual master and Krishna. And so she has to be honored and protected, provided for. And a very important duty for the householders, so that the circumstances of household life do not bind them to the material nature, is that you touched on the principle of giving, which is super fundamental to the whole Grihastha program. Grihastha is actually supposed to regard all living entities as their own children, with no distinction. Of course, you are especially responsible for your own children. You're especially responsible for your own wife, but you're supposed to regard all living entities as your own children and protect them and provide for them. It is especially the duty of the grihastas to provide for all the members of the renounced orders of life, the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis are all supposed to be maintained, provided for by the grihastas. It actually is not the responsibility of the temple to provide for these classes. It's specifically the duty of the grihastas to provide for them. And then in addition to them, you provide for all living entities, even though the wild creatures are your dependents. You're supposed to care for all of them. And if you take that duty seriously, that will go a long way towards protecting you from the kind of entanglement that household life is prone to develop. What was that I want? Oh, and towards this end, also, Srila Prabhupada actually instructed his householder disciples that they are required to sacrifice or give actually 50% of their income is to go directly to the Krishna consciousness mission in one way or another. My experience is that most householders have had a really hard time trying to do that, and they usually argue that well, that's impossible. If I gave 50% of my income, I wouldn't be able to survive. I wouldn't have enough left to live on. But I don't know that, I have not seen comments from Srila Prabhupada in which he relaxed that standard. He was pretty firm about it, but I haven't seen that very many devotees have actually been able to do that. It was a controversy for a period of time. ISKCON leadership was really pressing for the grihastas to do that, and they pushed back and said, "Look, this is unreasonable. We can't do this." And it just kind of got left at that. But a householder is supposed to be motivated by his marital relationship to produce. It's supposed to be productive and work hard at whatever its particular occupation is. It's supposed to work hard. Ideal occupation for a Vaishnava Grihasta, Srila Prabhupada would say, is Vaishya. Vaishya engagements are ideal, but whatever the occupation is, you're supposed to work hard at making as much as possible so that you can actually give 50% more or less painlessly and provide support to all the living entities, particularly all the non-grihasta devotees. And the temple, of course, is supposed to be supported by the grihastas. So it's a huge responsibility. There's a great deal of work. And not everyone's been able to do that. Sure.
May I just propose an alternative? As I heard from my spiritual master, His Holiness Devanamrita Swami, he did say that, because this has been brought up, and he mentioned that Yeah, it's very difficult for devotees to give 50% of the income these days. I can also testify to that. But we can give our time. We can give a lot more of our time. Our time is worth more than money. I think that's what all grihastas should be doing personally, because the economies have changed. There's a lot to say about the Vaishnava economics and how we could be having Varnashrama Dharma and everybody could be supported. But obviously, we're just so far from the ideal. However, grihastas can give a lot more of their time. The tendency is that we work, and work kind of sucks, and then afterwards you want to indulge, bhoga yag. But if we can, instead of indulging, give more time for devotional service, then that's also extremely valuable. It might not be, it could be even more valuable than just giving your money. It just depends on how Krishna wants to accept the offering. So I would just like to share that, as I heard from my spiritual master, as an encouragement to all of those who cannot give 50% of their money, that we should be giving a lot more of our time. What do you think about that, Tarika Prabhu?
Well, I think absolutely everyone should be giving as much of their time as they can, because
Meaning like directly engaged in service at the temples, Radha Damodar, or serving the cows, or doing Sankirtan or something.
Well, that's absolutely what Srila Prabhupada had in mind. He expected, he was very specific about this. He expected the householders to be directly associated with individual temples and rendering service to the temples. These days, it's grihastas often want to maintain as much independence as possible. They try to make their own home a temple, so they do everything independently. They'll have their own set of deities and do their own worship and service within their home. Srila Prabhupada approved of that for those who could not live near the temple, which happened in some cases. But as far as possible, he encouraged the devotees to live right near the temple and actually attend the temple functions daily, just like those who actually live within the temple. And that was the standard. All of the householders, I can tell you that in the early days, all the householders attended all of the temple functions just as everyone else did. And they participated in all the temple activities. They did not maintain separate deities. That kind of redundancy was regarded as very wasteful. If you're going to be offering service to deities at all, might as well help with the worship of the deities of the temple. In fact, the devotees did not even cook separately for themselves, and that was discouraged. Everyone took prasad together at the temple. The householders had their apartment. They lived there, they slept there, but they spent all their time at the temple and rendering service at the temple when they were not actually working. But things have moved far from that, obviously.
Can I just interject again, Prabhu? I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's your class. Do whatever you want.
No, I want to agree with you and back you up with another statement, and also give a minute to Dasi Prem Prabhu, who's got his digital hand up. And this is something specifically for the disciples of Devamrita Swami, of which there are many, that in New Zealand, when he's the GBC, and he is the GBC for Gita Nagari also, that in New Zealand, at my second initiation, I recall him saying that it is now officially a rule, as I'm saying it right now, that grihastas who are second initiated must worship the temple deity. Like he recognized the point that you're making here and emphasized that if you are a grihasta and you are qualified to serve deities, you must contribute service to the temple deities and not just, make your own little temple right next to the other temple. So he hasn't made such a rule here at Gita Nagari, but I think that all the disciples of Devamrita Swami who are listening should feel like that's an instruction. We have to as much as we can. So I absolutely agree with you, and just makes for such a nice community, and the Lord is so pleased with that. So come on, grihastas, and me too. I need to come and do more deity seva, even though it's like an hour drive, but I'll try. All right, let's Dasi Prem Prabhu, you have you have the floor. Please take us home, back to Godhead. If you're still there. If you've left, I won't blame you.
Yeah. No, definitely I'm left. Definitely appreciate both you sharing. Yeah, just on this point you're mentioning about like compatibility and service, and maybe that being like a like whatever, a standard to base, your desire to be with a certain person on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, because these things can also change, right? Like like you might have some point some desire to engage in some activity, but then these things can change. So
yeah,
I guess I'm asking for maybe a little more elaboration, and I guess with that kind of doubt that I placed in mind.
brother, just any sort of contractual arrangement is always a risk. That's why contracts exist. You can't find a perfect arrangement, a perfect partner. It doesn't exist. You just try to work together, try to get through whatever difficulties might be there, try to find middle ground. Yeah, people change, not as much as you might think. My personal observation has been that when a person comes to Krishna consciousness, whatever sort of setting and service that they originally started with, that tends to be the service that they like doing for the rest of their life. Like, I happen to come through this particular type of preaching center, and that's just always what I want to do. It's just that same thing that I saw first. Some people, they first come through a temple and they're just so in love with the deities and the service there. And that's just like what they want to do. So I don't know if people change that much in terms of their inclination for service. But if there is changes in relationship, you just gotta go with it. You got to try to find middle ground. Relationship is all about compromise. As Stephen Covey said, we would look for win-win solutions. If one person is winning, then that means both parties are losing. Only if both parties are winning, then is it a real relationship. So that means finding compromise, finding middle ground. Someone wants to serve in a different way, you got to try to find a way to make it work. There's no formula. There's just a lot of praying, a lot of talking, a lot of crying, a lot of resolution, a lot of joy, a lot of sorrow. It's a whole thing, my dear brother. But we should have confidence that Krishna can keep people together, even very, very different people. I mean, if we're on the level of the same elevated platform of spiritual understanding, then we can be together. Even people who come from very different backgrounds, ethnically, culturally, somehow we can be together. So we just have the confidence that it can work, but there isn't a flawless formula. If there were a flawless formula, I'd write a book and I'd make billions, because everybody's trying to figure it out. But I'm not so experienced. You should ask far more experienced householders like Jagannath Pandit Prabhu. When I'm in trouble, I reach out to Jagannath Pandit Prabhu, which is not often enough. But sometimes I have difficulty and I ask him. And he might tell you also, there's not really a formula. We just always try our best. Hare Krishna. All right. We're seeing the darshan of their lords, Sri Sri Radha Damodar. So I guess I'll stop there. I hope that answer was somewhat satisfying, Dasya Prema. It's kind of a non-answer. But my real answer is you ask Jagannath Pandit or Dharka or someone else. Sarvatma Prabhu. Jai. Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.